I'm here with Bronwen Newcombe, a director of Davenports Harbour Lawyers. Bronwen, I think we all need to be brave enough now to knock on that door that says redundancy. Nobody wants to have the discussion. It's a dirty word. Nobody wants to go there. But the reality is the situation that businesses are in, I'm actually advocating that they start those discussions regardless. They need to know who they are and what they are in that space. So from your perspective, from a legal perspective, how would you advise businesses to even start the discussion?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think you're right. So prior to getting to the point where you are talking directly about restructures or redundancies, there's a whole piece prior to that around what does COVID-19 mean for our business? You know, what can we see from the past 1 month, 2 months? Have we been affected? Are we in hospitality? Are we in tourism? Are we in aviation? If we're not, we might not have seen any change whatsoever. But it's really important for business owners and leaders to be having those discussions around business continuity, getting a plan in place, looking at ways that our business, my business, can flex, can adapt, can change to whatever the landscape unfolds, because it's going to unfold. We're not totally sure what that will look like, but it's absolutely imperative that we start having those discussions as leaders as to what options we've got. So we can't plan for everything, but we can certainly put some things in place to start the ball rolling with looking at how we're responding to this environment.
I'm just going to interject here that on the website Business North Harbour, they have got some resources of processes you can follow. Because again, let's be honest, you know, you can be a successful business, but you've never even considered that I needed these decisions. So you don't actually know how to start the conversation. Yeah. So I'm just saying to people, go to the website. There are some resources there.
That's great.
Okay. So you've sat with your trusted advisors. You've looked at what we can generically call, what is your plan B? What is the significant information that you need to start focusing and going below the line with?
Yep.
And we come up to redundancies, that this is a question that we need to start looking at. So at that point, what are the legal obligations and how should you start thinking as a business owner?
Yes, so just again, before I get to the redundancies, I would be suggesting that also having discussions around, the government's whole push with the government, the COVID-19 wage subsidy and the COVID-19 leave payment is to retain staff.
Yes.
So there's absolutely a mechanism in place at the moment, and I'm sure more will be revealed as we go on, to try and help businesses retain. So I'd be having those discussions around, looking at the leave payment, looking at the wage subsidy. Can that stop our gap?
Yep.
Also, if it doesn't, what about going to 4-day weeks? What about asking if people voluntarily want to be made redundant? There might be some people who had that on the cards. So asking for volunteers around perhaps redundancies, asking for volunteers around perhaps taking some unpaid leave or having a change in reduction of hours. So there's all those kind of things before you get to the hard line of saying...
And what we're actually talking is creative thinking, isn't it? I
hate
to use that word when we're in a grown-up space.
Same page.
But that is actually going to be the difference.
Yep, yes? It is.
Because the process that we've all lived and relied on actually is gone now.
It is.
And we're all making this up. However, as a business owner and leader, you have a legal responsibility to everybody you employ to go through this with this kind of open mind. Be creative. What can we put on the table? What can we offer that we never thought last week, last year, we'd ever even consider finding those words? Today, now is the time to be the courageous leader and put that on the table.
It is, and some businesses are lucky that they've got maybe a business advisory person who comes into their board, or they might have, often I as a lawyer fulfill that role from time to time within a business, or an accountant might. So some businesses do have that connection, but some of the SMEs don't. And I guess it's just really important, if you don't have that advisor, A, can you find someone to bounce and have that creative conversations around? And B, if you can't, then you need to be doing that on your own or with some other leadership group within the business to make sure you have gone through that. Because from a legal perspective, a redundancy is the last resort. You have to have, even regardless of COVID-19, you have to have gone through other mechanisms to try and plug whatever gap is happening prior to someone losing their job.
I think we need to reiterate that. loud
Yep.
and
Yep.
clear.
Yep.
it is the last resort.
It's the last resort. The landscape
And you're going to
has
need to
certainly
give
changed,
evidence.
but it's the
Even
last
in
resort.
today's world,
Yes.
you're going to have to give a whole process of evidence of how you got there.
Yes.
You don't panic, wake up and think, right, that's it, I'm going to fire half the staff because I don't know how to cope.
No. So should you do that, not only will you be responding to COVID-19, you'll also be responding to 15 personal grievances letters.
Lovely.
Yep.
So let's just say it as it is, because we haven't got time to dance around this subject yet.
Yep.
You don't get to behave like that as a leader. Yes,
No.
There is still very real process.
Absolutely.
And even if you feel like it, and I've got empathy, I understand, but that's not what your role is at the moment. It's to follow process.
Correct.
So we're both on the same page. This is all about process. So how does this start?
Okay.
So you've had the discussions,
Yes.
you've brainstormed, you've been as creative as you like, but you've come to the stark reality that you need to be looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do it?
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying every restructure or redundancy is case by case.
Yes.
So there's no set formulaic, templated way to do it. But I can give you a general idea of what you're required to do as an employer. So I guess what we've just talked about, that it's a last resort. So in order to make or propose to make a position disestablished within your business, you have to have a business case. So it can't be someone thinking, gosh, I've been sick and tired of this employee for some time, their performance is low. Look, COVID-19's happening, I can justify making that person's job redundant. It's not going to fly, and it's not appropriate, it's not acceptable. There has to be a genuine commercial reason why you're looking to disestablish that role.
So can you describe to me what a commercial reason is? I know
Sure.
we're going really granular here,
Yep.
but I think when people are under pressure and they're frightened, they tend not to hear things. So what is it? What would that be?
Certainly COVID-19 is a commercial reason that would justify
Yes.
looking at disestablishing some positions, but you'd have to show why. Like, are you in tourism? Are you, has the business been affected? Has one arm of the business been affected? So that you no longer need that many people in the workforce because of what's happening in the economic climate. Other reasons might include things like technology. So technology has taken over the role that someone may have been, physically doing in the business. Or again, downturn. So general downturn can be a commercial reason why you're looking at changing the structure of how the business is laid out with people.
So again, I'm just going to reiterate what I'm hearing from you. Those are the overarching areas that you look at, but you still need an evidenced process of what you have been through, what information have you used to come out with these conclusions.
Correct. And so an employer should be providing that information to the employee. So you're required, prior to having a restructure, you're required to go through a process of consultation. And so at the start of that consultation, if I'm the employer and I've got someone whose job I'm thinking about whether the business can sustain it or not, I would be providing them with a letter that would set out the business case, that would set out what the proposed outcome would be, what that would mean for that person if it went ahead. Would ask them to come to a consultation meeting to give their feedback. So I cannot make a decision on my proposal until I have consulted with the potentially affected people. And that's the law. So there's no getting around that. People shouldn't try and get around it. It's there for a reason. It allows the person who's potentially affected to have input in a decision which effectively takes away their income, their ability to pay their mortgage, their rent, their food, their provision of family. It's a massive, massive deal for someone to lose their job, and an employer is required to follow proper process. Very strong on that. There's no
leadership,
reason
core
why you
values,
shouldn't.
Being human, and that is what's going to make the difference to all of us as we go through this crisis.
Yep.
How do you measure how human you were through this? It doesn't mean that there aren't, there are going to be, this is the stark reality, there are businesses that are going to have to go down this road of redundancy.
Yes.
But because you have to do it, doesn't mean that you A, do it in the wrong way, or B, that you do it without a human element.
No, I agree.
Front and centre.
Yes, and so in terms of more reasons why you need to do it properly is, so any employee can bring a personal grievance against a company if they think the process, so procedurally it was unfair, or substantively it was unfair. So even if it's absolutely clear that this is what the business needs to do to cope with COVID-19, if you haven't done it in a procedurally fair way, you can still get a personal grievance and still be looking at a big payout to try and settle it. Just one thing before I forget, your comments, Sian, around doing things humanely particularly in this climate. I would be recommending to all employers to sign up with an EAP service. So EAP is an employee assistance program. So there are some EAP providers out there that do casual contracts. So if you can either do an annual subscription, which costs the business a bit more, but it means that any employee can be ringing an 0800 confidential line for support, for help, but particularly if a business is going through a restructure and proposed redundancy, my recommendation is you should always be offering that service to the potentially affected people.
You have people's hearts, minds and lives in your hands at the moment, and making people redundant even in times of calm when we don't have crisis is hard enough. But at the moment, please, everybody who is listening to that, please, please, please go that extra mile. The law isn't going to say you have to have it, but being a decent human being and have a core set of values does.
Yeah, and I mean, redundancies, I would all, unless you've done them before, unless you've got HR experience, you need to get legal advice. It's not something that you should be winging or trying to navigate on your own. It's something that absolutely you should be getting legal advice to know what the ducks are, to set yourself up so that you're not dealing with COVID-19 in your business, plus potential personal grievances because you didn't follow a process. The process is there, as you said, it's humane, it requires consultation, it requires communication, good faith, and it requires a legal process to follow, and you should be following it.
Thank you for your time. I know you've got to race back to the office and get back to lots and lots of worried people and phone calls. But thank you for your time, and thank you on behalf of Business North Harbour. You know, you've really, really helped us today. Thank you.
Sian, you're welcome. And perhaps if I can just leave on Adrian Orr, the Reserve Bank Governor's comment the other day. He said to people to over-communicate, to stay calm, and to plan and prepare. And that would be my parting sentiment too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sian.